Because not only did you have bandits who would steal sheep and kill shepherds, but there were also wild animals in the field. So David's men, while they were in the precincts where David was living, they were making sure that Nabal's flocks and herdsmen were kept safe. He doesn't recognize that it's David that helped get him to the point where he's able to shear sheep. Now here it's David that he ignores, but if he will say this of David, whom he can see, I am sure he says it of God, whom he cannot see. Ladies and gentlemen, we do this ourselves, don't we? Nabal's not an aberration in the Scriptures. Nabal is an example and speaks to our condition. Because we too, you know that old saying about children, that children see a toy and they say, what's mine is mine, what's yours is mine. That's Nabal. Nabal has the what's mine is mine attitude. I'm going to keep it for myself. This is mine. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've done for me. And then he's also saying to the Lord, I don't care who you are and I don't care what you've done for me. That's the fool. Because the Bible very plainly declares the fool is the person who says in his heart, there is no God. Psalm chapter 14. So if there is no God and I've done this all on my own, then why, yes, I'll keep it for myself. Thank you very much. He doesn't recognize what it is that's made him great. And it's not Nabal, by the way. It happens to be the Lord that's done this for him, in spite of him. But he can't even recognize a simple boy out in the wilderness protecting his sheep. He could, but he doesn't. Because he's so stingy, he's so greedy, he's so curlish, he's so evil. You say, well, that's Nabal, that's not me, but aren't we that way sometimes too? A little curlish, a little evil, a little stingy, a little what's mine is mine, and don't ask me for anything. Aren't we that way? Oh, there's a little bit of Nabal in, I think, all of us. He makes light of who David is and of the Lord's anointing on him by saying, well, everybody nowadays is breaking away from his master. Shall I give to men whom I know not whence they be? Well, he better find out. Because this man who's asking is going to be the king of Israel. He should have a little more foresight than this. He should have a little more grace in his heart than this. As a matter of fact, that's what David asks for when he goes to him. He asks him for grace. He says, can you have a little grace in your sight for me, for my men, and for your son David? Well, he doesn't. He's tight-fisted with what does not belong to him. I think he would make a great American if he were alive today. Because we like what we have, and we want to keep it forever, don't we? We like our money. We like our titles. We like our lands. We like our possessions. And give it? No, thank you very much. It's mine, you see. I made it. I created it. This is the blessing of the Lord. I wonder if Nabal was a tither. Probably not. Because you see, if you can't give, you're probably not tithing. Tithing, giving, seed sowing, ladies and gentlemen, those are the marks of the grace-filled heart. Nabal displays none of that here. He doesn't even display the goodness of a man to help someone in need. There's no giving in him whatsoever. There's no liberality in him whatsoever. All he is stingy and tight-fisted. You know the old saying, so tight he squeaks when he walks? That's Nabal. And that is not the person of Christ. And so for a Christian, we look at Nabal and we say, that can't be me, that shouldn't be me, God help me, is that me? Am I a Nabal? Well, let me ask you a question. What's your giving like? Are you tithing? Because if you're not tithing, you're not giving. And if you're not tithing and giving, you're not seed sowing. And that is the person of Christ in us. That's the liberality and the freedom of Christ in us when we're able to do that. Nabal, no way. Don't know you, don't know who you are, don't know where you're from. And, just everybody these days, how can I trust anybody? It's time to loosen up. Yes, sir. It's time to loosen up, because if you cannot be liberal with what you can see, how can you be liberal with what you can't see? So Nabal is an example to us. An example of what the fool does. He keeps it all to himself, hoards it, so that no one else can have it, and then wickedly derides the other person. David is the next one. I was just going to preach about Nabal, but I got to looking at David and I thought, whoa, there's just really two really good examples here in this chapter, and I just couldn't pass it up. So I said that Nabal was nobody's fool. I'm going to call David the great manipulator. David is the great manipulator in this chapter. Notice what he says there in verse 6. He tells his young men that go to Nabal. He says to them, Thus you shall say to him that liveth in prosperity, Peace be both to thee, and peace be to thine house, and peace be unto all that thou hast. Now, that's the greeting that the young men are to give, and they're going to say this in David's name. Okay? Notice the language here. To him that liveth in prosperity. That's not really the best translation. Better translation would be, you've heard this greeting, l'chai. It's a Jewish greeting, l'chai. It means life or live. That's exactly the word that's used here. So the young men were to show up and say, l'chai. And then they say, shalom, peace. And they say it 3 times. Peace to you, peace to your house, and peace to everything. Hey, if I've missed anybody, well, it's just peace all around. Just everybody get some of that. You know? L'chai, shalom, to you, to your house, and everybody, everything that you own. There it is, peace, have it. It's all for you. And that's how they're supposed to greet Nabal. It's a beautiful greeting. So David puts this in the mouth of the men that he sends to Nabal. And then he has an angle. Notice David's angle there in verse 7. Now I have heard that thou hast shearers. Really? Now thy shepherds which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them, all the while they were in Carmel. And then in verse 8 he says, now that's his angle, that's verse 7. He's protected them, so he's got a little leverage with Nabal, he thinks. So, he comes in with all these peaceful words, wonderful language of greeting, and then he says, oh, by the way, I helped your men. They were in Carmel, and I kind of protected them. It's just kind of on the down low. But, they didn't lose anything while they were under my care. That's his angle. And then his request, he says in verse 8, ask thy young men. Man, they'll tell you. Wherefore, let the young men find favor in thine eyes. That word favor there should be translated grace. Let there be grace in your sight. For we come in a good day, because they're shearing. So it is a good day. It's a day of celebration. A time, actually, of celebration, not just one day. But this is a time of celebration. Give, I pray thee, whatsoever cometh into thine hand unto thy servants and to thy son David. Notice the language here. The servants and the son. So David is placing himself under Nabal. He's not trying to say, you better, because I'm the future king of Israel, and by the way, I've been anointed by Samuel, and by the way, I'm a giant slayer. Oh, and by the way, have you seen my resume? Maybe you should be nice to me. He doesn't approach him that way. He says, let us find grace in your sight. It's always interesting how the attitude of the world, which is gimme, keep it, I'm not going to share it, comes into conflict with grace in your sight. It always happens that way. And David's request is very simple. It's very straightforward. He's manipulating because he's telling him what he's done for his shearers and for the shepherds. But now he says, these are your servants and I'm your son. So he really kind of, puts himself down under Nabal there. He says, unto your servants and to your son David. And what does Nabal say? That's the whole request. Well, we had Nabal's reply to David right there in verse 10. Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? Well, there be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. Shall I then take my bread, my water, my meat that I've butchered for my shearers and give it to people I don't even know who they are or where they're from? That's Nabal's reply. Okay. So Nabal said no. You know what? That's on Nabal, isn't it? That's on Nabal. What's Nabal going to get out of that? Nothing. Giving a gift to a man who could use a gift, giving a gift to a man who really has helped him, giving a gift to a man who's been anointed by the prophet to be the king. I'm sure Nabal knew that too, because I'm sure Jesse told Nabal about that. Giving a gift to that man is not a problem, but Nabal's going to hold it for himself. He's not going to give it because he's churlish, he's evil, he's wicked in his heart, he's stingy. He just doesn't give. That's Nabal. He's a fool. And David comes, he makes this request, and maybe David should hear the words now because his men come back and say, here's how Nabal replied. Maybe now David should just say, well, okay. You know, that's Nabal. But he doesn't, does he? Look at how David replies. 21. Surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained unto him. And he hath requited me evil for good. So and more also do God unto the enemies of David, if I leave of all that pertained to him by the morning light any that pisses against the wall. Wow. What happened to peace all around? What happened to lie? What happened to that? How come there's none of that? You mean to tell me that it just took one no to set David off on this murderous rampage? Is that all? Is that all it took? You mean to tell me that there was such a thin veneer of religiosity on top of David that as soon as it was pierced, underneath is a heart of murder? You want to tell me that's what's going on here? Oh, I think so, my brethren. David comes, look, hi, peace, peace, peace. It's beautiful. We come on a good day. But underneath, what David's not saying is, you better give it to me, buddy, or I'm going to kill you. That's what he's saying, isn't he? He doesn't mean peace. He doesn't mean life, long life, none of that. Oh, what David means is, you better give it to me and you better do it right now. So what's David's problem? David's problem is David doesn't know where his source is. He doesn't know who his true supply is. That's David's problem. Do you only do good? Let's ask that question. Do you only do good when you get a reward from it? I don't know. You have to answer that question, do you? Well, apparently that was David. Apparently, that's how David treated this situation. He says there in verse 21, surely in vain have I kept this fellow's stuff in the wilderness. In vain. So David did it because he thought he was going to get something out of it? Is that why he did it? You mean he just didn't do it because he's a godly man? You see, godly people do good things because it's the right thing to do, not because they're going to get something out of it. And I would hope that David would do the right thing simply because it's the right thing, not because he's going to get something out of it. You see, David is not looking at the Lord here. He's not expecting his supply from the Lord. He's thinking, well, if I do this, then I'll get this in return. And then when that doesn't happen, guess what? Oh, ho, ho, ho. The giant killer comes out. Let me ask another question. Do you regret doing good when you don't receive the hoped-for outcome? Does that hurt inside when you don't get what you thought you should get? Yeah, well, it probably does if you do it for the wrong reason. If you don't do good because it's the right thing to do, then yeah, you probably will regret it. Friends, let me tell you something. You better watch out. Because if you're doing good only to receive something good in return, you're headed for a train wreck. A train wreck. Because deep, maybe not so deep, underneath your veneer of goodness, of well-meaning, there is a murderous heart that's going to explode unless you deal with it. So doing good only to get a reward from it, regretting doing good when you don't receive a reward from it. And then notice what David says there in verse 21, right there at the very end. He hath requited me evil for good. Well, bless his heart. Requited me